Hi, my name is Kate Koval. I was one of the community organizers with the Southeast Environmental, I'm sorry, I can't even think of the name. Hi, my name's Kate Koval, and I was one of the community organizers that founded the coalition to ban Petcoke on the southeast side of Chicago. We first started learning about Petcoke when the coal power plants in Little Village and Pilsen were closed down. We noticed that there was less coal along the Calumet River because dust has always been a problem, fugitive dust they call it. So like open air piles of product, if you will, has long lined the Calumet River, and that dust blows around. And the closer you get to the Calumet River, those neighborhoods, the houses always have a lot of dirt and dust on them. You can tell the trees are just they're struggling a little more. It just has a different look and feel the closer you get to the river, which is unfortunate because the river is a natural entity that most communities would see as a resource and a natural space. But in our community, the closer you get to the river, the more dirty it gets. So anyway, we noticed there was less coal piles because there was less coal being used. And then we noticed there was more piles. And it was dusty and dirty once again. The Southeast Environmental Task Force and some people from the NRDC took a boat ride down the Calumet River, and that's when they discovered, like, hey, this isn't coal, and what's going on here? And so we found out it was Petcoke. KCBX is the company. It's a coke carbon company, so owned by the billionaire Koch brothers. So they owned property off the 100th Street Bridge on the Calumet River, and then also near the 106th Street Bridge on the Calumet River. So it used to be owned by the south site, which is near the 106th Street Bridge, used to be owned by DTE, which is a Detroit energy company. And so they had a contract with BP, which is in Whiting, one of the largest oil refineries around, to accept all of their Petcoke. Now, BP started producing more Petcoke because they started refining tar sands oil. So tar sands oil comes from Alberta, Canada. It's completely decimating First Nation communities out there. So basically they mine it, and then they send it through pipelines out here, and then it's refined at BP in Whiting. And then once it's refined, the leftover product, the waste product, is Petcoke. And then Petcoke can be used as fuel. We don't burn it in the US anymore, or if it is, it's like in really small scale manufacturing or industrial places, but it's burned en masse in other countries like China and Mexico, where they have much more laxed environmental regulations. So, coming back around, KCBX then bought the property from DTE, the Detroit company, and they inherited that contract from BP to start accepting all of this Petcoke. So Petcoke starts moving through the community like crazy on barge, on rail, and on truck. And it makes sense, right? Whiting's right over the border. Why not just send it right over here, store it there, and then they wait for it to get shipped overseas. So the community that was closest to the south site, which is near Wolf Park, started really getting just inundated with this dust. Kids were outside playing. They would come home, like when kids would get like a milk mustache or a Kool-Aid mustache, it would be like dirty dust and not dirt. Like you, it's different because it's oil based, right? So wiping it off, it wouldn't just come off. You'd have to really rub it with soap and water. Very different than just regular old dirt. So then that community, started noticing this more. I think there was probably talk within that community like, hey, have you noticed this? What's going on? But what really started setting things off was there was a storm in August, and it was a really bad storm. And these plumes of dust started coming over from the river. And it's right, like it's interesting and disgusting that the Little League field, it's the senior little league field, is literally right on top of these piles. Like you could throw a rock and hit a pile. And so they had ball games going on. Everyone like had to take cover. Everyone's like, what is going on? It looked like there was a fire or a tornado or something. I mean, it was really intense. People were taking pictures of it. People who were having cookouts had to bring all their food in. There's dust all in the food. We have pictures of that. Everyone is like, is there a fire? What is going on? Facebook was just like blowing up with these pictures, and everyone in the community is like trying to figure it out. Well, the more we learned, the more concerned we became. We realized that this was actually plumes of dust coming off of these piles of this waste product. And then when we learned what this product was, it's like, oh my God, it's even worse than coal dust. It's a smaller, finer dust. So like it's the particulate matter is what they call it. It's PM 2.5. So that like bypasses all of your body's natural systems, and it will get lodged into your lungs. Just really like nasty stuff, and we freaked out and became really concerned, and started talking to people, especially in that Wolf Park community, just going door to door, talking to the kids, getting people to hand out flyers, had an initial community meeting, and people were really angry and fired up and yelling, and found out that the alderman at the time, John Pope, knew about this. He knew far before that KCBX was going to start inherited this contract to start accepting all of this Petcoke. He never held a community meeting. He never told anyone. He's like, I don't know what, like dur. And I mean, I don't know what was going on, if he was getting kickbacks or what, but the bottom line is that he didn't inform the community. We found all of this out ourselves. We did all of our own research. We hosted all of our own community meetings. This was completely led by regular working people who were just absolutely concerned about their children and their lives, and disgusted that this was even happening. And there's always people that were also like, well, this is an industrial area. What are you going to do? Because I wasn't alive when all of those steel mills were operating that lined the Calumet River, but apparently that was a really, although it was a great time economically, environmentally, things were also not good, but that wasn't really part of like a collective conversation yet. There was always dust, and it was dirty and nasty when you lived close to the mills. But people have really great jobs in the mills too, and could send their kids to school and buy a house and buy a car. That is not happening with piles of Petcoke. There's no jobs associated with it, like a handful, less than 20, I believe, work actually, like have decent manufacturing industry jobs. So yeah, I mean, this whole process really activated the community. I think that when things first started, like this collective anger was really great. It was great to stand next to someone and be angry with them, and then be like, so what are we going to do about it? And then organize what we were going to do about it. So the whole process was very empowering, and also really eye-opening to talk about like what does it really mean to organize within your community when your community is oppressed. You know, like people look to organizers it's almost like social work. You know, I have people saying like, hey, my kid's experiencing this at school, what can I do? And I'm like, I don't know. But it's a way for people to get together and then start talking about bigger issues as well. But a lot of other issues besides Petcoke come up, like poverty and immigration and racism and in general just capitalism, and why is our community experiencing this like environmental travesty and this public health issue, and there's literally no action being taken. When you start reading about what breathing in this particulate matter, this dust does to you, you start getting really concerned about like chronic heart problems and chronic respiratory problems. And there's been no research done, and these asthma vans come to the local elementary schools because so many of the kids have asthma. The vans come to the school to treat the kids. That's not happening in Lincoln Park. That's not happening in the Gold Coast. This is a class issue. This is a race issue. This is an issue of a lot of bigger things. But I think the main issue here is that I don't understand how it's a public health issue. I don't understand how public institutions can take no action when there's it's like an emergency. I just felt like it was an emergency situation, and then having to deal with the IEPA, the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency, the Chicago Department of Public Health, dealing with all of these public and governmental institutions. You start realizing, they don't do anything for us. They don't work for us. Like maybe there might be a handful of people in these institutions that are good people, but the nature of the institution is to not actually work for poor people, to not value poor people's lives and working people's lives and people of color's lives. It's really disgusting once you start navigating these institutions and it's like hitting your head against a brick wall.
Did you try reaching out to city officials or representatives of the Koch brothers? And if so, did they have a statement, or did they try?
Yeah, the Koch brothers just kept saying, well, we installed this multi-million-dollar sprinkler system, and we're doing everything we can to control the dust. The IEPA put up fence line monitors. There's also a monitor on George Washington High School on top of the school. But they don't measure for PM 2.5, which is that small dust I was talking about that bypasses the body's natural filters. It just measures for PM 10 and then whatever the bigger particles are. So even what response... I feel like the response that the community received was a smack in the face, which just made me more angry, because the responses that are the ways we measure air quality is highly flawed. So like there's measurements every day and they're not in real time. Like when I called the IEPA, they couldn't even it took several phone calls to talk to someone to even get the data from the school, the high school's monitoring system. And then when we got it, it was just in the spreadsheet and there was no recent data. And then it's like, well, what does this mean? So then I had to go find like an environmental engineer to talk to. And luckily, I know people or have access to people that can interpret these things, but what if I didn't? Or what if I didn't speak English? Or what if I didn't have the time because I'm working and, have kids and, or I work shift work, so I'm not around from 9 to 5, or I have to sleep because I'm on midnights, or any number of barriers to even access public information. And then to have that information and not be able to even interpret it is really frustrating. And then to even dig deeper, that once you have the interpreted information, you realize like, oh, so even if the PM 2.5 level exceeds what is supposed to be healthy, if they do an average of, I don't know the time span, but it's an average, and it's not, so if you have several days that it's really windy, right? And so you're exceeding that level, and then you have several days where it's not windy and the average is normal, then that never registers as being a public health issue or companies going over what is supposed to be like their regulated levels. So the more I learned about it, the more I was like, oh, this whole thing is flawed. Because what if we have several windy days in a row? So it's like, so that's just like acute exposure, right? That's just like one day you have exposure. So that doesn't count. But what if it's chronic acute exposure? What if it's not several days in a row, or it's not an entire month? What if it's 5 days a month? 5 days out of every month, you have high exposure to levels of 2.5, PM 2.5. Nobody cares. Nobody cares that kids are getting asthma. Nobody cares.
Is the byproduct out in the open? Is it covered?
No, it's not covered. It's just in the open in these huge piles.
And has your organization or anyone tried to implement them, I guess, protecting the byproduct to keep them from getting blown away?
Yeah, they had KCBX proposed building a big, huge barn to put it in, and I think that's what they've done at a port in California. But the city said, okay, well, we want you to build this barn by this amount of time, and they were like, well, we can't do that. It's not like feasible or financially feasible, or whatever. We can't do that by your deadline. And they're like, okay, well then you can't be there, So that's the way I understood it. So they didn't build it. What they did now is that they transferred it, or they made the sites transfer sites instead of storage sites. So I don't know what that means, like how long the product, which is actually just a toxic waste. I'm going to call it toxic waste from here. I don't know how long the toxic waste can sit there, technically, before it has to move. So basically, I think it comes on a train or by barge, and then it sits there, and then it goes right onto another train or barge.
Is it ever shipped through the river, or have you seen any of the product go into rivers? Have there been complaints?
Oh, of like water quality issues?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that they were cited there was like a crack in one of the walls, and so there was a citation for that. I mean, I've been on the river. You feel gross after I've taken a boat ride down that river. You feel like grimy. You can see a residue on top of the river. I don't think anyone's pushing to do water quality tests in the Calumet River because it's like just accepted that that's an industrial river. The Army Corps of Engineers dredges the river, so all of that polluted sediment, they dredge it, take that out, and then that's stored in essentially what is a landfill right in the community. So they dredge the river of the toxins and then store those toxins right in the community until it's safe to cap it. I guess it's got to go somewhere. I mean, when I first talked to John Pope, the alderman at the time, I was just sitting down having like a one-on-one with him, and he said, well, the nature of the river is to be industrial. That's the nature of that river. And I was like, well, that's not the nature of any river. Like, that's the history of the river since the Industrial Revolution. But, you know, it's a different time, and it's frustrating when people are very stuck in a certain way of thinking. I realize that's the reality, but that reality sucks. So what are we going to do about it? And how can we create a better reality for our community? And I think that's the role maybe of the organizer to really have to push people, maybe because they're comfortable. You know, he had a comfortable life. So why is he pushing to create a new life for that river, you know?
Do you think the officials from the storage facility or the transfer facility think in the same way as the alderman, meaning energy has to come from somewhere and it just has to be, I guess, in the south area instead of the north, or it's the nature of it being there, it's always been there, so they're going to continue? Is that...
Yeah. I mean, I think they're concerned with their profit. I don't think they really care about the public health of the surrounding community. You know, the Koch brothers, as we know, have bought a lot of Congress, and so I don't think they care. I don't think it's like a thought that really crosses their mind. I think they're just like, whatever is profitable, that's what we're gonna do.
Have they tried and made solutions to the public, or are they placing it on you to look for solutions?
I think their solution is, and it's only a solution because we force them, is to make it a transfer facility, and that's not a solution to me. I mean, they've sent out letters, and it's all bullshit. You know, the letters are just like, I read them and I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, it's just, I mean, you're a big corporation that's owned by billionaires. Get out of here. I'm not trying to read your letters. That's like, everything's fine. We have a multi-million-dollar sprinkler system installed. We're now a transfer facility. The community, you know, it's like PR people are behind it. You know, they have lawyers and public relations professionals, and they have a whole team of people. But, you know, we did too, and we do too. So you just do what you can. But they're working with billions of dollars, and we were working with $0. So it was pretty impressive, and it's been impressive what the community has been able to do with little to no resources.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.